Mr. Vice President, the 1994 Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act, known as the Assault Weapons Ban, expired because it was proven to be ineffective at reducing violent crime. And according to FBI.gov's violent crime stats, assault weapons, as defined by the bill, account for less than 1% of homicides annually. In fact, that's less than hammer murders. So my question is, what reasonable measures can we implement that might reduce the loss of life as opposed to repeating the same failed laws of previous administrations?
Well, let me set the record straight in your question. It did not expire because it proved ineffective. It expired because it had to be reauthorized in 10 years. When I originally wrote the legislation, in order to get it passed, there was an agreement that it would have a 10-year life and have to be reauthorized. And the last administration chose not to seek reauthorization. That's number one. Number two, it is true that the vast majority of gun deaths in America are not a consequence of the use of an assault weapon. But that begs the issue of whether or not assault weapons have any real utility, either A, in terms of any sporting or self-protection needs that, look, as you know, the Supreme Court recently ruled that it is an individual right to bear arms, an individual right. That used to be a debate, it no longer is a debate. And I've had that position my whole career. Number two, they said, though, that it is constitutional to put reasonable limitations on who can own and what kind of arms can be owned. Now, one of the reasons why the assault weapons ban makes sense, even though it accounts for a small percentage of the murders or those who die as a consequence of a weapon every year, is because police organizations overwhelmingly support it because they get outgunned. They are outgunned on the street by the bad guys and the proliferation of these weapons. When, in fact, there were fewer police being murdered, fewer police being victimized, being outgunned, when the assault weapons ban, in fact, was in existence. And the number of assaults on police officers and the deadly assaults on them has gone up since the ban has been lifted. It is not an answer to all the problems, but it's a rational, in my view, a rational limitation on what type of weapons should be owned, could be owned.
And Mr. Biden, when you say the rational, what would you say to people saying that some of this legislation, especially against AR, when you mention the police deaths, it's creating policy based on outliers rather than really hitting the real issue?
Well, I think, look, we do get to the real issue, and I assume, Philip, we're going to get a chance to talk about it in this chat. We do get to the real issue, which is the vast majority of gun deaths. And by the way, there's been over 1,200 just in America just since what happened up in Connecticut in Newtown. But the fact of the matter is, it does negatively impact upon the physical health and well-being of police officers and others. And it is in no way does it deny or trench upon a legitimate restriction on the type of weapon that can be owned. And the courts concluded that as well. So the idea that it doesn't solve every problem, although it only solves part of a problem, without trenching on anyone's